Welcome. I'm Lee Cowan, and this is Here Comes the Sun, a closer look at some of the people, places, and things we bring you every weekend on Sunday morning. Since their debut in the early 90s, Pearl Jam has become one of the most legendary and beloved rock bands of all time. Now out with their 12th studio album, Dark Matter, lead singer Eddie Vedder sat down with Anthony Mason on a tour stop in Montana. They chatted about the group's incredible rise to fame and how he fell in love with music as a kid, even asking for his very first guitar for his 12th birthday.
That was a big gift.
I walked Christmas morning and I could see the silhouette of it. And my heart dropped, and then the lights came on and it was a vacuum.
No, really?
Yeah. And then everybody finished opening their presents. I'm getting a little chills. And I said, oh, one more, and they pulled out a guitar case, so that was nice.
Later in the show, Vedder explains why he thinks Dark Matter just may be their best album yet.
Do you know when you got something good?
You know, in this case, we could just bring in a seed. And then by the end of the day, everyone just, you know, it was like time-lapse photography, you know. By the end of the day, you're looking and tending to a healthy plant.
Then Doug Redenius has loved all things James Bond since he was a kid. He already had a pretty extensive collection of 007 memorabilia when he bought a submarine used in the 1981 film For Your Eyes Only. Soon, offers to buy other Bond vehicles came in, leading to a museum-worthy trove of treasures. If you want to know where to look at his collection, well, there are plenty of places, including here, at the 007 exhibit at the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, where Doug has some of his more than 40 vehicles on display. He's got the jet boat from The World Is Not Enough.
And occasionally, to keep it in good running order, somebody has to drive it.
That's all coming up right here on Here Comes the Sun. Pearl Jam's band members have been doing rock and roll their own way since they burst onto the music scene back in 1990. At times, they've clashed with their record company, they've refused to create music videos, they even sued Ticketmaster, all to safeguard the integrity of their music for themselves and for the fans. Here's Anthony Mason.
On the road with Pearl Jam, this night in Missoula, Montana.
Does this all travel with you? Pretty much?
It does. It's all the comforts of home.
In lead singer Eddie Vedder's dressing room.
Oh, you got a dartboard in the corner.
Give me a little focus before we run out.
You'll find a dartboard, a Chicago Bears football jersey,
Walter Payton?
Walter Payton.
Tell me about this photograph.
and a picture of the great Hawaiian surfer Duke Kahanamoku.
Goes with you everywhere.
It goes with me.
Yeah.
Vedder, who loves to paddle out, likens songwriting to surfing.
You put these building blocks together so you can kind of, let's say, shape the perfect wave.
Yeah.
You know, that has a couple turns and then a barrel and then
Yeah.
the lyrics come, because then the lyrics come from surfing that wave.
Pearl Jam's latest wave, Dark Matter, is the 12th studio album from a band that's been playing together for nearly 35 years now.
Pretty much everything I've ever written, it's always started off of paper napkin, now cloth napkins, because we're in nicer hotels.
You were 12 when your mom gave you your first guitar?
Yeah, my birthday's December 23rd, so I begged to have the two gifts put together to afford something as extravagant as an electric guitar, which I think was $115.
That was a big gift.
I walked Christmas morning and I could see the silhouette of it. And my heart dropped, and then the lights came on and it was a vacuum.
No, really?
Yeah. And then everybody finished opening their presents. I'm getting a little chills. And I said, oh, one more, and they pulled out a guitar case, so that was nice.
That's kind of cruel.
Well, I don't think they meant to. How about my mom getting lucky and getting a vacuum for Christmas?
Vedder's record collection included the Jackson 5, James Brown, and The Who.
When did you find The Who?
We had a babysitter bring over Who's Next and left it there. I didn't see the sun for about 2 weeks.
What was music giving you then?
I mean, it's always just felt like a lifeline. Records like Quadrophenia gave me the knowledge and hope and antidote to despair, knowing that somebody else was going through what I was going through.
In 1990, Vedder was living in San Diego when he heard a group of Seattle musicians was looking for a singer. They sent a cassette of instrumental songs. He wrote lyrics to them while surfing.
I was doing those midnight shifts, security, so when I went for a surf in the morning, I remember it being super foggy and one of those days where you think maybe I won't go out, but I had the music in my head, the instrumental, and just kind of wrote it, and then I was still wet when I hit record.
When you heard what he sent back, what did you think?
I listened to it, and then I remember I left and went and got a coffee, and then I came back and I listened to it again, and then I remember calling Stone and I said, "You need to come over here right now."
Bassist Jeff Ament and guitarists Stone Gossard and Mike McCready flew Vedder up to Seattle to audition.
There was just, it was like you felt it. Like you were like, oh, this is what it is.
Yeah.
I was like, this is heaven.
Pearl Jam's debut album, 10, would be one of the biggest selling rock records ever, staying on the Billboard chart for nearly 5 years. The sudden success was overwhelming.
It was an avalanche that hit us at the front end of all of that. So we were just digging out, trying to survive and sort of regain control, sort of feel like we were in control of our destiny.
They fought with their label, refused to make videos, and sued Ticketmaster.
And I remember those tickets coming out, and the tickets would say $28 Pearl Jam, but then we'd be like, wait a minute, we're charging $16.
You just felt this corporate, fingerprints on you, and you wanted to
break free of it.
break free and rebel and claim your music for yourself and your crowd.
Pearl Jam and its crowd have long been deeply loyal to each other.
This is a hometown show for you.
Yeah. It's like a lot of history and family and old friends.
In Missoula, where Ament has lived since he went to the University of Montana, he hosts a fan fair with local nonprofits before the gig.
You just want to help people. You just want to do more for your community.
You played Missoula a lot before.
On tour, Vedder labors over every set list.
And then there's your list of all the songs you have to choose from.
That's a lot of songs.
Well, there's a lot of covers and
Yeah.
things that we played once.
And how long does that process typically take you?
Sometimes in a ridiculously long amount of time.
He writes up his set lists in calligraphy, which he learned to pass the time on the road.
Keeps me focused and entertained.
Do you still enjoy being on the road?
Wrong question.
When several band members got seriously ill this summer, Pearl Jam had to cancel 3 dates.
This was like a urobronchial with pneumonia on top of it.
Yeah, you described it on stage as like almost like a near-death experience.
A near awful death experience.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily mind dying.
Vedder turns 60 this December. Ament is 61.
You obviously must have a lot of trust that if you all get together, something's going to happen.
Well, it does.
Why do you think this is still working after all this time?
It's miraculous in some ways that we made it through it, and then also it's just a testament to our friendship.
I was going to say good, clean living.
After the break, an exclusive excerpt from Anthony Mason's chat with Pearl Jam. Something you can only see right here on Here Comes the Sun. Stay with us.
You leave enough space to see what will happen.
As promised, here's more of Anthony Mason's interview with Pearl Jam.
You talked about how good how you felt this was the best music you'd made. Where did that feeling come from?
You try to avoid saying things like that because it does, I think most groups and writers and musicians, they always feel like their last work was their best. And but I really thought about that quite a bit before putting it out there in public. And I think it's, you know, you always go in with high expectations, or you leave enough space to see what will happen.
Yeah.
So you don't have, you know, you're not bringing in 12 songs, or each person's not bringing in 5, 6 songs. You come in and somebody, you know, in this case, we could just bring in a seed. Yeah. And then by the end of the day, everyone just, you know, it was like time-lapse photography, you know. By the end of the day, you're looking and tending to a healthy plant.
Do you know when you got something good?
Do we know when we have something good? You know, like this record, it felt like, and going on tour with this record and these new songs and kind of keeping the blood fresh and healthy in the group and for the audience as well.
Yeah.
And to ultimately want to play live in the on a current tour of a band that's been around for 30 years, you still, you know, if you can play 7, 8 new songs and have them transmit and be as good as any of the songs that folks have been listening to for 15, 20 years.
Do you get nervous about playing new songs?
Our first 10 shows, for sure.
No, I'd say 2, but.
Yeah.
I mean, just from the standpoint, not only because you're obviously playing them for the first time, but just for the reception. I remember asking Elton about it once, and he goes, yeah, he goes, I noticed that people always get up and go to the bathroom on the new songs, and it really pisses me off.
You're playing a new song, and it looks like my eyes are closed, but I'm actually seeing if anybody's going for the T-shirts or anything. We've done great.
Up next, the many vehicles of Bond. James Bond. Welcome back. Fictional British spy James Bond easily has had some of the coolest vehicles ever imagined, from a skiing Aston Martin to a 2-person submersible. But once the filmmakers called cut, many of those created for the films were just simply forgotten. Lifelong Bond fan Doug Redenius has expanded his memorabilia collection to include some of 007's most iconic rides. The 7 actors lucky enough to play 007 have found themselves in some pretty crazy contraptions. Sean Connery in something called an autogyro. George Lazenby tucked into a bobsled. Roger Moore in a microjet.
Fill her up, please.
And then, of course, there's the recurring Aston Martin. The classiest conveyance of all.
The theater that I saw it in, people stood up and applauded when they saw the car. It was like another character in the movie.
Goldfinger.
Doug Redenius was 8 years old when his dad took him to see Goldfinger. He's never forgotten that father-son moment, the first of many to follow.
Up until when my father passed away, we had seen all the Bond movies together.
Bond. James Bond. The fictional British Secret Service agent has been featured in more than 24 films over the last 60-plus years. Some sit differently with different generations, but for Doug, they all mattered. The former postal worker started collecting, small stuff mostly. If it was Bond, he bought it. But one day, he heard about something big, really big.
The Intrepid Aircraft Carrier Museum in New York called the producers of the Bond movies in California and said, "We have a submarine of yours, do you want it back?" And they were like, "What?"
It was the two-person submersible from For Your Eyes Only. Doug bought it for $3,000 and he stuck it in his backyard about an hour south of Chicago.
We didn't know what we were going to do with it.
Whispers about a guy who owned a Bond sub got loud enough that People magazine heard about it.
And then you started getting calls?
We started getting calls and finding other vehicles, and that's how it got started.
That yellow helicopter behind us? Well, that starred in From Russia with Love.
Doug got a tip about where that was, too.
That is the best scene, when he's just sitting there holding it and he shoots it out of his
He drops it inside the cockpit.
Brace yourself. Another tip led him to the fiberglass Aston Martin that made this very slippery getaway in the living daylights. Doug found it nesting with the birds in a barn in the UK.
The ski actually still works.
No way.
It's coming at you. Is that great?
No way.
Can you swim?
Nothing, though, really beats the Lotus submarine car from The Spy Who Loved Me. The producers left it behind in the Bahamas. It sat outside on cinder blocks for years.
What you really enjoy the most is the hunt, right? The search.
For me, that's when I get a sniff of anything that might turn out that I think it's real, that's what keeps me motivated.
He's ended up rubbing elbows with Bond stars, even appearing as an extra in License to Kill.
So can you see yourself in there? Like if we...
Yeah, if you know where to look.
If you want to know where to look at his collection, well, there are plenty of places, including here, at the 007 exhibit at the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, where Doug has some of his more than 40 vehicles on display. He's showing off Zhao's ice-jousting Jaguar XKR from Die Another Day. He's also got the jet boat from The World Is Not Enough.
And occasionally, to keep it in good running order, somebody has to drive it.
Gee.
Yep, that's Doug, sitting right where Pierce Brosnan did. None of these are his, technically. They belong to the Ian Fleming Foundation, a nonprofit that Doug helped found in 1992. It's named for the British novelist and car enthusiast himself, who wrote the original Bond stories back in the 50s and 60s.
Money earned from Bond exhibitions, like another one underway at the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., all help support the storage and restoration for the rest of the Foundation's collection.
Literally, the roof of the shed had collapsed in on it.
That's the hook and ladder truck from View to a Kill. And that's the Kenworth, used for this unforgettable stunt in License to Kill.
Well, the padding from the movie is still here. If you hadn't spent all this time doing all this, what would have happened to all this?
Most all of it would have rotted away.
Just 'cause there's nothing in there, right?
Nothing in there.
Ugh.
Yet.
That, sadly, is all that's left of the 1971 Ford Mustang Mach 1 that got Sean Connery out of a pretty tight squeeze.
When you see the shape it's in now, it's sacrilegious. Just don't cut yourself.
Once they get the money, volunteers will start restoring it. But for the last 3 years, they've been too busy bringing the Foundation's newest and biggest find back to life.
It's the front half of the executive jet from Goldfinger, That first Bond film Doug saw with his dad all those years ago.
Did the Boneyard know what they had?
No, they didn't. They knew that Elvis had flown in it, and they knew that Muhammad Ali had flown in it. And I didn't tell them that James Bond had been in it until after we bought it.
That's a nice touch.
Well, that's my idea. I just thought it was great.
Doug Redenius is still that 8-year-old kid at heart.
When was the last time you drove this?
Just before it went on display.
And every once in a while, when that kid gets the better of him and he gets behind the wheel of one of his finds, he knows he's done his dad's memory proud. He also is reminded of some very good advice that Bond himself was once given.
Need I remind you, 007, that you have a license to kill, not to break the traffic laws?
I wouldn't think of it.
Good.
I'm Lee Cowan. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you right here next time on Here Comes the Sun.